I built his life. I deserve his fortune. Those words still rang in my ears as I sat in the courthouse parking lot, gripping the steering wheel of my truck. My name is Alan Morrison. I'm 49 years old, and I'd just watched my wife of 23 years tell a judge she deserved $14 million of my money, half my construction company, and the lake house my grandfather built with his own hands. Victoria had always been good with words. That's how she'd gotten her claws into me back in college when I was a broke kid from Billings, Montana, working 3 jobs to pay for engineering classes. She was studying journalism then, had this way of making everything sound reasonable, even when it wasn't. But sitting there, watching her lawyer present their case like I was some deadbeat who'd stumbled into wealth, I felt something cold settle in my chest. 23 years of marriage, and she talked about me like I was a stranger who'd stolen her life. The thing was, I'd been feeling this coming for months. Little things that didn't add up. The way she'd started asking detailed questions about the business finances. How she'd insisted on updating our insurance policies last spring. The sudden interest in my daily schedule, wanting to know exactly where I'd be and when. I'd caught her going through my desk drawer 2 weeks ago. She claimed she was looking for stamps, but I kept those in the kitchen. When I asked what she really needed, she got that look on her face, the one that said I was being paranoid and controlling. That night, I'd started paying closer attention, started noticing how many phone calls she took in the other room, how she'd changed the password on her laptop, how she'd begun scheduling lunch meetings with people she wouldn't name. My lawyer, George Brennan, had warned me this day might come ugly. George had handled my business contracts for 15 years, knew Victoria well enough to see through her charm. He'd pulled me aside after our first consultation and said something that stuck. Alan, in my experience, when someone starts planning a divorce this carefully, they've been thinking about it a lot longer than you realize. Now, watching her walk out of the courthouse with her attorney, I understood what he meant. This wasn't about irreconcilable differences or growing apart. This was calculated. She wanted to take everything I'd built and leave me with nothing but the clothes on my back. Victoria climbed into her silver BMW, the one I'd bought her last Christmas, and drove away without looking back. She had no idea what was waiting for her in that manila folder sitting on my passenger seat. Some betrayals you see coming. Others hit you like a freight train. But the worst ones are the kind where you realize you've been played for years, and you were too trusting to notice the game. I started Morrison Construction right out of college with a beat-up pickup truck and a toolbox my dad gave me. Victoria was there from the beginning, or at least I thought she was. She'd bring me coffee on job sites, help me organize invoices at our kitchen table, pose for pictures when we landed our first big commercial contract. Back then, she seemed proud of what we were building together. She'd tell her friends how I'd started with nothing and worked my way up to residential developments, then commercial projects. When we landed the contract to build the new medical center in downtown Billings, she threw a party and made sure everyone knew her husband was the man behind Morrison Construction. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. I was too busy growing the business to notice when she stopped asking about projects or celebrating our wins. Too focused on providing for our future to see that she'd started viewing my success differently. We never had kids. Victoria said she wasn't ready, then later claimed the business took up too much of my time for us to be proper parents. I regretted that decision for years, wondering if children might have given us something stronger to build on than just money and convenience. My parents died within 2 years of each other when I was in my early 40s. Dad had a heart attack and Mom followed 6 months later like she couldn't bear to be without him. They'd left me the lake house and 40 acres on Flathead Lake, land that had been in our family since the 1940s. Victoria had immediately started talking about selling it, said it was too far from town and too much maintenance for a vacation place we barely used. I refused. That land meant something to me, represented something about where I came from and what my family had built. Victoria stopped bringing it up, but I caught her looking at real estate listings for lakefront property, calculating what our place might be worth. The warning signs had been there for months, maybe years. Phone calls that stopped when I walked into the room. Bills for lunches at expensive restaurants that she'd claimed were with college friends I'd never met. A sudden interest in our financial statements and insurance policies that she'd never cared about before. Last month, I'd found a business card in her purse for a private investigator. When I confronted her, she said she'd picked it up for a friend who suspected her husband of cheating. But the card had notes written on the back in Victoria's handwriting. My daily schedule, the address of our office building, questions about asset searches. That night I'd called George Brennan and told him to prepare for the worst. George had been handling my business legal work since the early days, knew Victoria socially, had watched our marriage from the outside. His exact words were, "Alan, get your house in order. This feels like a setup." I should have listened to my gut sooner. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, hand-delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Victoria had moved out the weekend before, claiming she needed space to think. She'd taken her clothes, her jewelry, and the silver BMW. Left behind 23 years of marriage like it was nothing more than a rental agreement she'd decided not to renew. I sat at my kitchen table reading through the demands her lawyer had laid out, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. She wasn't asking for half of everything. She was demanding specific pieces of my life, calculated down to the dollar. 14 million in cash and assets, 50% ownership of Morrison Construction, the lake house, and all 40 acres of family land, spousal support of $15,000 a month for 10 years, even the rights to use the Morrison name for her planned interior design business. She'd done her homework. Every demand was designed to either destroy what I'd built or force me to pay her to keep it. The lake house demand hurt the most. She knew that land was sacred to me, knew I'd fight harder to keep it than anything else, which meant she'd probably trade it away for something else she wanted more. But the thing that really got to me was the timeline. According to the legal filing, she'd been planning this for 8 months. 8 months of sitting across from me at dinner, sleeping in the same bed, pretending we were working through our problems while she systematically documented every asset I owned. I called George immediately. "She wants everything," I told him. "I know," he said. "I got a copy this morning. Alan, this isn't a normal divorce proceeding. This is a hostile takeover disguised as marriage dissolution. What are my options? Limited, if we play by their rules. But there might be another way." That afternoon I drove out to the lake house, sat on the dock my grandfather had built, looking out at water that had been in my family for 3 generations. Victoria had never understood why this place mattered to me. To her, it was just real estate with a nice view. I thought about the early years when we'd drive up here on weekends and she'd actually seem happy. Before the business took off, before money became the measure of everything, there had been a time when Victoria Morrison was the woman I wanted to spend my life with. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who saw my success as something she was entitled to, rather than something we'd built together. I made 2 phone calls from that dock. The first was to my accountant, telling him to freeze access to all our joint accounts pending the divorce proceedings. The second was to a private investigator George had recommended, a former police detective named Patricia Hayes who specialized in financial fraud cases. If Victoria wanted to play hardball, I'd give her a game she'd never forget. The water was still as glass that evening, reflecting the mountains like a mirror. Soon Victoria would discover that some reflections show you things you'd rather not see. I filed my counter-response 2 weeks later. George had crafted it carefully. We weren't just defending against Victoria's demands, we were questioning the basis for them. How had she calculated the value of my business? Where had she gotten the financial records she'd cited? Who had helped her assess the worth of private assets that weren't part of our joint property? Victoria's reaction was swift and vicious. Within 24 hours, I received a restraining order claiming I'd been threatening her. According to her sworn statement, I'd followed her to her new apartment, sent intimidating text messages, and made verbal threats about what would happen if she proceeded with the divorce. None of it was true. I had her phone records to prove it. No threatening messages, no contact at all since she'd moved out. But the restraining order meant I couldn't approach her, couldn't contact her directly, and looked like an unstable, controlling husband to anyone who didn't know the facts. The local newspaper picked up the story. Prominent businessmen served with restraining order in contentious divorce. Victoria had fed them just enough information to make me look bad without mentioning her $14 million demands or the suspicious timing of her legal preparations. My business started feeling the impact immediately. 2 potential clients called to postpone meetings. The bank that handled our construction loans requested additional documentation for a project we'd already been approved for. Nothing direct, nothing they could be sued for, but enough to make my life complicated. George warned me this was just the beginning. She's trying to isolate you, make you look unreliable and dangerous. Classic strategy. If she can damage your business and reputation, she strengthens her case for maximum financial support. But the worst part was discovering how deep her preparation went. Patricia Hayes, the private investigator, had been working quietly for 10 days when she called with her first report. "Mr. Morrison, your wife has been planning this for at least 18 months, not 8. I found evidence of consultation with 3 different divorce attorneys, 2 different private investigators, and a forensic accountant who specializes in business valuations. 18 months. She's been building a case against you since before your parents died. The timing of this divorce isn't coincidental. She waited until the lake house property was fully transferred to your name, until your business finished its best year on record, until your personal net worth hit its peak." I felt sick. While I'd been grieving my parents and building our future, Victoria had been calculating how to take it all away. "There's more," Patricia continued. "She's been secretly recording conversations with you for months. Phone calls, dinner conversations, private discussions about the business. She's got hundreds of hours of audio that she plans to use to prove you're controlling and financially manipulative." "Is that legal?" "In Montana, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. Since she was part of every conversation she recorded, it's admissible in court." The full scope of Victoria's betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Every intimate conversation, every private discussion about our future, every moment I thought we were alone. She'd been gathering evidence to use against me. That night, I sat in my empty house and realized I wasn't just fighting a divorce proceeding. I was fighting a woman who'd spent nearly 2 years systematically documenting my life, studying my weaknesses, and building a legal case designed to destroy everything I'd worked for. She'd turned our marriage into a reconnaissance mission, but Patricia had found something else, something Victoria didn't know about. "Mr. Morrison, there's one more thing. Your wife has been meeting regularly with someone you know, someone who's been feeding her inside information about your business operations." My blood went cold. "Who?" "Your business partner, Kyle Brennan, George's younger brother." Kyle Brennan had been my business partner for 12 years. George's younger brother, a commercial architect who'd joined Morrison Construction when we started bidding on larger projects that required his design expertise. I'd trusted him with company finances, project planning, and confidential client information. I'd also trusted him with my marriage. Patricia's report was thorough and devastating. Kyle had been meeting with Victoria twice a week for the past 6 months, always at small restaurants outside Billings where they were unlikely to be seen by anyone who knew us both. The meetings had started as brief coffee conversations, but had grown into lengthy dinner discussions where Victoria pumped Kyle for detailed information about our business operations. She's been asking him about cash flow, upcoming contracts, equipment valuations, and real estate holdings, Patricia explained. "Your partner's been providing her with information that should be protected by business confidentiality agreements." But it was worse than corporate espionage. Patricia had photographed them together, and their body language told a story that went beyond business consultation. Victoria and Kyle weren't just sharing information, they were sharing intimacy. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "The business meeting started 6 months ago, but I found evidence of contact going back 14 months. Text messages, phone calls, hotel receipts. Mr. Morrison, your wife has been having an affair with your business partner since before your parents died." The timeline made sickening sense. Victoria's sudden disinterest in our marriage, her questions about the business, her reluctance to spend time at the lake house. It had all started around the time Kyle had begun working more closely with our residential development projects. I thought back to company dinners, holiday parties, casual conversations where Kyle had been present. He'd heard me talk about family finances, inheritance plans, and my intentions for the lake house. He'd known exactly what Victoria would need to build her divorce case. There's more, Patricia continued. I believe they're planning to start a business together after the divorce is finalized. Victoria's interior design company isn't just a side project. It's meant to be a full partnership with Kyle. She gets your money in the divorce settlement. He provides architectural services, and they build a competing business using the client relationships he's developed while working for you. The betrayal was total. My wife and my business partner had been planning to destroy my life and build their new one on the ruins. I called George immediately. When I told him what Patricia had discovered, the silence on the phone lasted nearly a minute. Jesus Christ, Alan, Kyle's my brother. I know. This is going to destroy our family. He destroyed it when he decided to betray our business and help my wife steal everything I've built. George's voice was quiet, professional. What do you want to do? I want to beat them at their own game. How? I'd been thinking about that since Patricia's call. Victoria and Kyle had spent months building their case against me, but they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated how well I knew my own business and how carefully I'd documented everything over the years. They want my financial records? I'll give them financial records. They want to know about business valuations? I'll provide complete transparency. They want to play games with asset assessment? I'll show them how the game really works. Alan, what are you planning? I'm planning to give Victoria exactly what she's asking for, all of it, every single demand she's made. That doesn't make sense. It will. The key to everything was a document Victoria had never seen.